In this video, we're looking at UFC Vegas 98. I'm going to give you my full card prediction starting from the top down. As always, you can call me Kunith. Let's make some money this week. We got top flyweights in the main event this week. Brandon Royval's fighting the perfect Tatsuro Taira, who looks to be just a win away from fighting for the belt at only 24 years old. Crazy to think that somebody who's 24 years old with a ton of experience is already undefeated, one of the best grapplers in the division, has proven that he can compete against top level competition. Oscar, was that supposed to be from Muhammad Makayev? Oh, he was cut. So, okay, gotcha. Tatsuro Taira comes into this fight as a minus 230 favorite, and I understand why. He's been favored every time he goes out there, and he's the new shiny toy. People are dying to put their money down on Tatsuro Taira. I get it. But understand that betting odds are less about the likelihood of something happening and more so the price that the sportsbook is willing to sell you something. It's the price they think you're willing to pay for something. So your sportsbook is selling you minus 230, minus 235, minus 240, and it's not a wide enough line for you to be turned off by it. But in reality, this is a very tough fight for him. Brandon Royval's been one of the best fighters at 125 pounds for years, making this easily the biggest test of Tatsuro Taira's career, because when you consider the skill set and the tape, those things make me think that this is a bad matchup for the young man. First, at striking range, there's a reason why everybody tries to take Brandon Royval down. They don't want those problems on the feet. Strong output, knows how to put combinations together, is sometimes offbeat, which could confuse a guy that's as clean and as technical as Taira. And Royval breaks a lot of rules defensively, not just with striking, but with grappling as well. We'll talk about that in just a second, but he breaks these rules. He gets out of position. He does things you're not supposed to so that he can land offense of his own. And on the mat, his takedown defense has failed him many times before, but he scrambles with the best of them. He's only been submitted once in his career, and that was by the champion, who couldn't do it in the second fight. And we all know where Tatsuro Taira wants this fight. He wants the fight on the mat. He needs the fight on the mat. He's going to be looking for takedowns, and he's undefeated, so obviously it works for him. It's hard to argue that the game plan's not going to work this week, but when you look at some of his fights in the UFC, like against Jesus Aguilar, for example, Taira found himself in a guillotine right away. Now, he stayed patient, he stayed calm, he escaped the guillotine, which is a credit to him because Jesus Aguilar does have a good gilly. Against Edgar Chairez, he got rocked in the first round at striking range, and then he was seconds away from being submitted in the third round by a guillotine again. He might have got saved by the bell there. It was a mounted guillotine by Chairez, and with respect, Brandon Royval's a bigger submission threat than both of those gentlemen. So I wouldn't be shocked if we saw Taira get caught in something, and fighting Royval's like fighting a stray cat. You know, good luck keeping him in one spot. And that's the problem that a lot of guys have with Taira, is that he is very good at getting them to settle in certain positions, heavy downward pressure. He's able to keep him there. He's able to lock him there, but I could see Brandon Royval making him work for every second of top control, and that's where things get a little bit different. Tatsuro Taira hasn't gone 5 rounds yet. Royval looked like he could have went 10 rounds last time out against Brandon Moreno. So where are we? Well, you know we've got the more proven gas tank on the side of Royval. Not to say that Tatsuro Taira doesn't have the gas, we just haven't seen it yet. The experience edge is clearly on the side of Royval for this fight. He's fought former champions, fought for the title, 5-round experience, but he's a sizable underdog. And I really wonder what that Alex Perez fight would have looked like if Alex Perez's knee didn't give out on him and people say, oh, Taira did that. Sure, whatever. I just wish the fight with Alex Perez would have went longer so we get a better idea of what Tatsuro Taira looks like when he's truly pushed, really tested. But we haven't seen it yet, and for us to lay chalk against a proven vet like Royval, I don't like it. But we know the striking edge is on the side of Brandon Royval. The grappling might be a bit of a wash. He's got the edge and experience. Give me Brandon Royval to get it done this week. I think he's live for a club and sub, or just catching Taira in a submission when he's changing levels against the fence, because that's where he's gotten caught before. Give me the underdog. Give me Brandon Royval to win this fight inside the distance. And real quick, if you haven't already, like the video, get it out of the way. It's a long video. We got 13 fights. Just get it out of the way. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Comment something for the algorithm. Let me know who was robbed last week. Was it Esparza? Was it Hubbard? Was it Pennington? And if you want to go a step further, tell me who you think is going to get robbed this week, because a couple of these fights are going the distance. Watch out. Next, we have a fight between Brad Tavares fighting Jung Young Park. This fight was supposed to happen months ago, and it was a bad weight cut from Park that stopped it from happening. No one was more relieved than I was, because let me tell you, I picked the Iron Turtle to win, gave a few reasons in the video, as you do, but I felt terrible about the choice, which never happens. Sometimes people in the comments ask, how confident are you in fighter A? The pick speaks to the confidence. I think they're going to win, or I don't. It's binary. So if I pick them, I'm confident in them. But this one felt bad. After making the video, I was looking for reasons to find why Brad Tavares is probably the better choice, and for one, if you look at their resumes side by side, Tavares has fought champions, high-level guys who have fought for championships. Meanwhile, Jung Young Park just lost to Andre Muniz, gave up 11 takedowns in that fight. Beat Albert Duraev, who's a one-dimensional wrestler and might not be all that good of an MMA wrestler. Dennis Tululin, the worst MMA wrestler. He makes Vyacheslav Borshov look like Kurt Angle. Joseph Holmes had a bad run in the UFC. He was cut. Eric Anders he beats in a bad decision. It was clearly 1-2 for Anders. He was knocked out by RoboCop. It happens. That's excusable. He beat Tefan Chukwi, who had a bad UFC run and was cut from the promotion. John Phillips went 1-5 in the UFC. Cut from the promotion. He has a decision win over Marc-Andre Barriol. Very solid. But in his debut, he got worked by Fluffy Hernandez. Fine. Happens. But when you look at it that way, apart from his decision win over Marc-Andre Barriol, whenever he fights a guy who can hold a roster spot, he loses. Brad Tavares is the epitome of holding a roster spot in the UFC. Why? Because Tavares is a sneaky, great athlete. Very hard to take down. He throws fast, straight punches, and he's been doing it at a high level since $20 would fill up the gas tank. So if Park doesn't get takedowns here, do I expect him to knock Brad Tavares out? Not really. I think the quicker fighter beats him to the punch, and the rounds are going to be close, but I think that we've seen Park take too many clean shots before and have close rounds, and that's where Brad Tavares is going to separate. 1 or 2 shots that land flush can really swing rounds. So I'll take the dog here. The MMA gods are giving me a second crack at this fight. Give me Brad Tavares to win this fight by decision. And I don't know what the odds are yet for the following, but Brad Tavares plus 3.5 rounds is kind of a stone cold lock. Yeah, I said it on camera for the world to see. And he probably finds himself in the official betting article this week, and the official betting article was very close. If they didn't rob Carlos Esparza, we would have been golden. But hey, these things happen. Probably should have just took plus 3.5 rounds for Carlos Esparza, called it a day. Gotta be like Owen Wilson and Vince Vaughn and Wedding Crashers, gotta lock it up. But if you want the official betting article this week, as well as the DFS strategy guide, lineup optimizer, data projections, tools, things like that, you can visit KunithMMA.com, all linked in the description and in a pinned comment. Back to the breakdown. Next we have a fight between Grant Dawson fighting Rafa Garcia. Finally, a favorite that we can look at and feel good about. Grant Dawson, big favorite on this card, and he really should be. Both these guys are normally looking to wrestle, get the fight to the mat, but Dawson is the better wrestler, the better MMA grappler. And we know because of the Bobby Green fight that we gotta be careful with Grant Dawson when he fights a guy with quick hands who can land cleanly on him. Garcia hasn't really shown us a ton of power in his hands throughout his UFC run, and Dawson's style doesn't really afford you a whole lot of time and space to do that anyway. Now Garcia is a scrappy guy, but Dawson should be able to get a hold of him this week, take the back, ride out the rounds. Grant Dawson's one of the best back takers in the game right now. Bigger, better experience, better wrestler, better ingredients, Papa John's. I think he gets to Garcia's back here. I think he submits him this week as well to put a stamp on it. Give me Grant Dawson to win this fight by submission. Next we have a fight between Corey McKenna fighting Julia Palastri this week. Closely lined fight between strawweights, both looking to get back on track after dropping their most recent fights. For Corey McKenna, it was an armbar loss to Jacqueline Amorim early in the first round. Amorim's nasty on the mat, but put a pin in that. We'll come back to that. For Palastri, she just dropped her UFC debut to Josephine Knudsen. She really needed that fight on the mat, but Knudsen was too good on the feet, crushing her on the volume, killing her on the numbers. Palastri did get takedowns and had some success. It was a competitive fight. The scorecards were kind of strange too. Most fans scored the fight 1-3 for Knudsen. I thought the same thing. I thought Palastri won the second round, lost the first and the third, but when you go back, all 3 of the judges gave the third round to Palastri. Strange. But again, close fight either way, and you like the kind of effort that she was giving you in the third round against a very tough fighter in that spot in her debut. So no shortage of heart from Julia Palastri. That's what we like to see. And if you're looking through her record, you'll go back and saw that she lost her fight on Dana White's Contender Series to Jasmine Jasdavicius a few years ago. That fight was up at flyweight against a big, strong Jasdavicius. She clearly should be fighting at strawweight, and that's where we find her this week. Now, she is slightly favored in this fight, and you can make the case for either, but I think the stronger argument is for the favorite here. Corey McKenna's had more UFC fights, but her skill set is limited. She relies heavily on takedowns, control, much like Palastri does, but I would argue Palastri probably has better jiu-jitsu. And on top of that, when you look at McKenna's run throughout the UFC, she's won a bad decision against Kay Hansen. Hansen should have won that fight on the scorecards. The biggest difference maker in that fight, Hansen was the better wrestler. She follows that up with a loss to Elise Reed, and Elise Reed is very bad on the mat. She's good at striking range, and Elise Reed has a lot of heart. She's going to make you work, but on the mat, Elise Reed struggles time and time again. So for Cory McKenna, her wrestling is her whole game. For her to not be able to keep Elise Reed down, super concerning. And again, I mentioned we'll return to the Amarim fight. That's super concerning because you go in there and immediately try to take down a decorated jiu-jitsu player at the start of the first round while you're dry and she's at her strongest. It just proves that there's no plan B. It's just, I'm going to take you down. I want to get you to the mat. And if I can't do that, oh well. And that's not going to continually work at the UFC level, especially with new, young, hungry fighters on their way up like Julia Pilastri, who can strike, is going to have a big reach advantage as well, and she's going to be looking to wrestle herself. So I don't really trust the fight IQ or the skill set coming from the McKenna corner this week. Give me the Brazilian to get it done. Give me Julia Pilastri by decision. Next, we have a fight between Daniel Rodriguez fighting Alex Morono this week. Things have not been looking good for D-Rod lately. 3-fight losing streak. You can argue that it should have been 4 because that was a bad decision against the Leech, and he's been fighting tough guys like the Leech, like Gastelum at middleweight, Ian Gary, who's a top welterweight, Neil Magny, who was putting it on him with the grappling in a way that you don't really see Neil Magny do to anybody, which is kind of concerning. Now, Alex Morono, bit of a generalist, but good submission game. He knows what he's doing on the mat, and I think that's where he could have a little bit of success, although D-Rod getting him down and keeping him down are very difficult things to do. But I think the line is a bit out of whack here, and it's largely because of recency bias, but only on one side. D-Rod hasn't looked good in his last 4 fights, but Alex Morono looked awful in his last fight against Nico Price, where he gassed pretty early, which is uncharacteristic, and he did that as a big favorite on that card with already having a win over Nico Price. So a lot of people probably threw him in their parlays. So I feel good about Alex Morono this week. Morono busts and everybody's like, you know what, I'm turning my back on you. I hate you. Price was able to take advantage in that fight, weaponize the cardio edge that he had, and he won a decision. Now we get Alex Morono here on a full camp. That's huge. Plus, he was getting taken down by Nico Price. He has an opponent in front of him this week who hasn't secured a takedown in over 4 years. Hasn't knocked anybody down with strikes in over 4 years either. And if I remember correctly, I don't exactly remember where I'm getting it from, but I think D-Rod has a bad back. I mean, I would assume like 6 and 8 men have bad backs. So I think the odds are in our favor. He probably has a bad back, but I'm pretty sure that's been a problem for him. So for him to sit at minus 200 or worse does not feel good at all. Hasn't looked good in 4 fights, battling injuries, confidence is probably low, tested positive for whatever it was, Ostarane, whatever Ryan Garcia took. Pushing 38 years old, it just all feels like a great buy low spot for Alex Morono this week, who has never in his whole career as a pro or an amateur, and this is going back since George W. was in office, you heard me, never has Morono lost 2 fights in a row. So give me the younger man, the full camp, the lifelong martial artist. Give me Alex Morono to win this fight by decision. Next, we have a fight between Josh Fremd and Abdulrazak Alhassan. At first glance, I wanted to take Josh Fremd, and if you've watched this channel for a while, you know I pick him too often. But I wanted to pick him here because he's bigger, he's younger, and well, that's it. There really isn't enough there for me. He doesn't have great cardio, he doesn't fight well from behind, he struggles to land takedowns in the UFC, and he's dealing with one of the biggest power punchers he's ever seen up until this point. Now, I don't like that Abdulrazak Alhassan likely gasses after 5 minutes, nor do I like that he's going to be reaching against a much taller opponent, but I do think that the only way he loses this fight is if he gets tired. It's not really what Josh Fremd is going to do to make him tired, it's more just carrying around all that muscle. 39 years old, has kind of been through it, but the encouraging sign is that the last time he went 3 rounds, it was against Joaquin Buckley at a frantic pace, and he looked good late. So we'll roll the dice. I don't think it even gets to that point, though. I think Alhassan finds the shot that knocks him out. Stupid power. Give me Abdulrazak Alhassan to win this fight by knockout. Next, we have a fight between Jared Gooden and the Black Panther. Fun matchmaking, and every Chidi Njokuani fight is fun on paper. The dude's got big power, really crisp technique as well. He's been doing it for so long. You'd expect nothing less, but it's impressive. Like, I bet him hitting pads is a work of art. He got back into the win column last time out after a 3-fight losing streak, gets his hand raised over Reese McKee in a fight where he got clinched a lot, but he did more outside of the clinch than McKee to win rounds, so good on him. Way to get back on track. And on the other side, Jared Gooden's coming off of a submission win over Wellington Turman, who I believe was released from the UFC, has not had a good run in the promotion. That was Jared Gooden's second fight back in the promotion. He came back after a short recess because he was cut from the promotion. He fought Carlston Harris on short notice, Didn't look completely outgunned though. Many people, myself included, thought he was going to get finished in that fight, but ended up fighting a hard 3 rounds, and that's kind of who Jared Gooden is. He gets tough matchups, he fights hard, comes up short, and that's important because you need to fight Chidi Njokuani hard to make him uncomfortable and to tire him out. You look at his fight against RoboCop. Chidi was looking real good early. RoboCop just kept fighting him, and eventually Chidi breaks and RoboCop gets him out of there. Same thing against Michał Oleksiejczuk. Looked good until he didn't. Michał just starts pressing forward, keeps moving forward, and finishes him. And we've talked about this about Chidi specifically, but also just overall with other fighters on this channel. I don't like seeing a guy later in his career move down in weight because it's a desperation move. He lost 3 in a row, moved down. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. He just wants to enjoy a size advantage, but he's compromising that explosive power that he has, the durability that might have been an issue up at a higher weight class, because I think a lot of people think he's going to go in there and just knock Jared Gooden out. Not a lot of people do that. You look on the screen, look at the amounts of fights that they've had. You've got Chidi with 33, Jared Gooden with 32. Jared Gooden's only been finished twice. Chidi Njokuani's been finished 8 times, with 5 of those being knockouts. And 2 of them have happened recently. So I'll take the guy with the better gas tank, the better durability. I think there's value on the underdog. I think the line is a bit too wide, and I'll take the more natural welterweight here. And if I remember correctly, Chidi Njokuani did fight at 170 pounds at one point, but you don't go into the biggest and most difficult promotion fighting at 185 pounds if you feel like that's not where you were supposed to be, especially not a guy this deep into his career. What happened was knocks out Marc-Andre Barriault, feeling great, knocks out Dusko Todorovic, feeling great. Then runs into RoboCop. Okay, this is a lot. Runs into Albert Duraev, becomes gun shy because of the RoboCop fight, and ends up losing a decision. Then he fights Michał Oleksiejczuk. Same thing. Oh, this isn't going well. Let me move down. You fight Rhys McKee. Okay, better matchup. But Jared Gooden's kind of a dog. He's coming hard, and I feel like he's going to get Chidi Njokuani out of there. Give me Jared Gooden to win this fight inside the distance. Another underdog for your mom. Next, we have a fight between Ramazan Temirov. He's fighting CJ Vergara this week. This will be one of the easier buttons you click this week. Ramazan Temirov is better everywhere. And if you've watched the channel before, you know CJ Vergara has our respect. He's a dog, and he's done well for us in the past. But this is a setup spot for Temirov to look good in his debut. Guy's got tons of power. I don't expect Vergara to be taking him down either, or even really threatening a takedown, meaning that Temirov will be able to let his hands go, and I think he's just going to land the bigger shots, which lead to him winning more rounds. CJ Vergara's tough, and he's going to hang in there for all 3 rounds, but I don't see much of a path to victory for him. I think Temirov is the real deal coming out of Rizin, and when you look at the current state of the UFC, him being signed from Rizin is kind of like, whoa. Kind of like, whoa. That's what you write in the script, Oscar? Jeez Louise. But I think it means something because a lot of the guys that are coming into the UFC right now, they're coming off of the Ultimate Fighter, they're coming off of Dana White's Contender Series, or they're coming from a promotion like LFA or Cage Warriors on a short notice call. But this guy was seeked out by the UFC, signed a contract, given a full camp to prepare for this day, and now he's got to debut against the guy who's 3-3 in the promotion and has missed weight in all 3 of those losses. It's a layup, so give me the favorite. The juice is worth the squeeze here. Give me Ramazan Temirov to win this fight by decision. Next, we have a very, very tricky fight to break down between Jonathan Pierce and Pat Sabatini. Featherweight grapplers, and sometimes when you get grappler versus grappler, it kind of cancels itself out and they end up striking, but I don't think that's going to be the case here because both guys are so committed to getting to their spot on the mat. So it's really going to come down to who can hold a dominant position for longer. Now, for Sabatini, we know he loves the clinch, loves tripping guys down, and he takes their back. That's his game. He's on back so much, you would think his father was a cape, and he has excellent control. He's very sticky when he gets to the clinch as well. He is 1-2 in his last 3, however. He was knocked out early by Diego Lopez. We all know how good Diego Lopez is, but still, knocked out in around 90 seconds. It doesn't really matter who you're fighting. That's not a good look. Same deal. He was knocked out even faster 2 years ago by Damon Jackson, who caught him with a front kick and then followed up with strikes. In between those fights, he did pick up a win when he dominated striker Lucas Almeida by taking him down, submitting him early in the 2nd round. Now for Jonathan Pierce, he's coming off of back-to-back losses. He lost to David Onama in a fight where he had no trouble getting the fight to the mat but kept getting reversed and ending up in a bad position. Before that, the iconic get up and do something boy is what Jonathan Pierce said as he laid on top of Joanderson Brito, who did in fact get up and did in fact do something. Works back to his feet, slaps on a ninja choke super tight, forcing JSP to tap. 2 really tough losses back-to-back, but what you do like from Jonathan Pierce is that wrestling. Relentless pace, relentless pressure, solid takedowns as well. We have seen him get taken down in the past. We saw Darren Elkins take him down twice. We saw Makwan Amirkhani take him down multiple times before gassing out in typical Makwan Amirkhani fashion. Makwan Amirkhani with Merab's gas tank is the best fighter of all time. Christian Rodriguez took him down twice on his short notice debut. Joe Lozon took him down when JSP was making his debut. He also knocked him out in about 90 seconds. So what really jumps off the page is you look at these Jonathan Pierce fights, he gets takedowns every fight apart from the quick knockout loss to Joe Lozon. And that's awesome. You want a guy who has that wrestling base to come in and get takedowns every fight. The concerning part is everybody who's tried to get him down has ended up on top of him at some point. Now, it's not as if Pat Sabatini is coming into his 20th UFC fight, but he has won the promotion a good amount of times. And what you'll notice is that Pat Sabatini's never lost the UFC fight in which he has secured a takedown. If he gets a takedown, it's a wrap. And it's not because he's going to go out there and submit you right away. It's more so because he's going to control you, and he's going to get a chance to feel you. He's going to know how to get you back to the mat. He's going to know with each passing second a better way to keep you there as well. So Jonathan Pierce always gives up a takedown, and now he's fighting a guy who never loses when he gets a takedown. I'll take the underdog here. Again, Sabatini controls him on the mat, sticks to him like glue, maybe finds a finish here with a rear naked choke. It would not surprise me at all. Sabatini is extremely patient, but if the fight starts getting short for Jonathan Pierce, if he needs to make something happen, if he needs to take some chances and Pat Sabatini's on his back, he will waste no time in grabbing up a submission. So give me Pat Sabatini, give me the underdog, give me the better grappler. Give me Pat Sabatini to win this fight by submission. Next, we have a fight between Nico Price fighting Themba Gorimbo, and one thing that this game has taught me is you can't be stubborn. Well, you can. Just know that it's probably going to hurt you in the end. I've picked against Themba Gorimbo each and every time. Worked really well in his UFC debut, but it hasn't since, and I just haven't been a huge believer of his. But he has turned in dominant performances since that fight against AJ Fletcher now. Has the level of competition been all that high? No. Is Nico Price a big step up in competition? Sure. But these two are at very different points in their career. Price is just looking to scrap, get a few more checks, try to feed the 20 kids that he has, while Gorimbo has his sights set at the top of the division. Will he get there? Can he compete with the top welterweights? Only time will tell. But what I do know, what I do believe, is that he gets the job done this week. Price is hittable. He tends to land a lot of strikes, but he also has a negative striking differential, and Gorimbo does throw a hard overhand. We've seen Price taken down before. We know that Themba Gorimbo is relentlessly trying to get to the clinch and get the fight down to the mat. And Nico Price has been in some wars. Themba Gorimbo not so much. So I think that Gorimbo gets it done here. In fights where Price loses, he almost always gets finished. So if you want to make the price a little bit better on Gorimbo, you take him by finish, which I think is the case here. That's going to be the pick for this fight. Give me Themba Gorimbo inside the distance. Next, we got a fight between Chris Barnett fighting Junior Tafa. Junior Tafa needs to get on the board here. It's do or die for him, and he knows that, and Chris Barnett just happens to be the easiest available matchup for him. A true luxury for these heavyweights to be able to go in there and fight a guy who's not actually a heavyweight. Unless you're Jake Collier and you sell, like you're Jim Cramer. But I think that's why Junior Tafa takes this fight on short notice. I think he knows that he's got Chris Barnett covered this week. Now, Barnett, tons of heart, at least in competition. You're not going to see him quit on himself, and he's going to give you a hard 3 rounds. You really have to kill Chris Barnett to get him out of there. But I see Tafa doing just that. He's had some rough matchups so far, but he has the power, decent striking. I'm not going to say he has great striking because it just hasn't looked like that yet, but he's got decent enough striking with that kickboxing background. And Chris Barnett is going to be standing right in front of him. Now, it doesn't feel good to lay minus 400 on this guy against really anybody, but I do think that he gets it done this week. Give me Junior Tafa to win this fight by decision. Next, we have a fight between Dan Argueta. He's fighting Cody Hatton this week, and you still haven't liked the video. We're all the way in, we're this far in. You still didn't like the video. You know what? I'm just gonna power through. No, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. You got a feel for Dan Argueta. He's had a rough run in the UFC. Makes his debut on short notice against Damon Jackson, up a weight class. Loses, no big deal. Follows that up with a decision win over Nick Aguirre. Does enough in that fight. Nick Aguirre, not a great UFC run, cut from the promotion. He has a mounted guillotine locked up against Ronnie Lawrence, and Keith Peterson decides, I'm gonna make Ronnie Lawrence tap. Ronnie Lawrence says, bro, I didn't tap. And Keith Pearson says, oh, my bad. Okay, no contest. The very next fight, he loses a decision to Miles Johns. Miles Johns pops for some bad supplement that he took. No contest, but he lost the decision in real person. And last time out, he was in an absolute dogfight against Jan Matsumoto, but he's winning. He's in control. He's getting takedowns. He's in the driver's seat. He gets guillotined. Not only does he get guillotined, but he's finished with 1 second left on the clock in the second round. Harsh. That's got to to be very, very difficult to watch back on film. So tough run for him in the UFC so far. From what we've gathered in these fights, he wants to wrestle. He's going to get touched up on the feet, so he's going to want to wrestle, but he's got the cardio to just shoot and shoot and shoot. He looks pretty physically strong in there as well, which could be tricky against anybody, but especially against a debuting fighter in Cody Haddon. He's coming off a win on Contender Series, young guy, only 26 years old, 100% finish rate, record of 7-1 with that one loss coming to Steve Erceg, just 3 fights into his pro career when Steve Erceg was already 7 fights deep. If you want to do your independent research, go back and watch Cody Haddon fights. 100% finish rate, don't take that long. And if you see what I see, what immediately jumps off the page to you is how well this guy mixes up strikes to the body and the head. Body punching, super underrated tool in MMA. I think in a year, maybe 2-3 years, we're going to see it used more and more and more, but it's an underrated tool in MMA. You don't see it as much as like boxing and stuff like that, largely because of the range that the fight is contested at. But this dude Haddon does a great job of uppercut to the body, right hand over the top, or hooks to the body, finish upstairs. I've seen him finish fights that way. I watched him fight this one guy, Mark the Shark. I forget what his last name was, but his nickname was the Shark and his name was Mark, and I thought that was fire. I didn't know how the fight was going to end, but I saw him land a body shot and I said, oh, he's about to knock him out with a shot to the body, and then 30 seconds later, liver, guy crumbles in front of him. He's got that in his locker, which is cool. But also in these fights, he's grappling a lot, and he can give Dan Argueta a taste of his own medicine if he starts shooting for takedowns. I do like that about him, but I do worry that he's going to get caught in a guillotine by somebody, and that somebody could be Dan Argueta. I saw multiple fighters wrap up his neck when he was shooting for a takedown, and what he tends to do a lot is if somebody low kicks him, he tends to try to catch the kick and run through them to get the takedown. Most of his takedowns aren't like that. Most of them, he's getting to the clinch and he's either tripping on the inside or the outside and getting on top. That's one of the best takedowns in MMA. But he does tend to try to catch leg kicks and then dive into a double leg, and that's not great, which is not good because when your back is flat but you're like parallel to the ground, then your head is right there in the danger zone. But when your back is flat and it's more perpendicular to the ground, then there's a lot of room right here, so you're not getting guillotined, and then you can get in deep on a double leg or a single leg and turn the corner and get the takedown. So I really worry that he gets guillotined here because of the way that he tends to shoot in on these double legs off of leg kicks. But if he doesn't, I think that he should have a lot of success because I think he can scramble with Dan Argueta. Not an easy thing to do at all, but this kid looks like he has it. And on top of that, I think when they're on the feet, he's going to butcher him to the body. And I think that he hurts Dan Argueta, who's extremely hittable. So give me the new guy. Give me the favorite. Give me the younger man. I do think that Cody Haddon wins this fight. I think he keeps the finishing streak alive. I think that he hurts him to the body, finishes upstairs like I've seen him do multiple times before. Give me Cody Haddon to win this fight by knockout. Next, we have a fight between Clayton Carpenter. He's fighting Lucas Hocha this week. Finally, getting to see Clayton Carpenter back in action. Made good on his UFC debut, but that was over a year and a half ago. So ring rust? Possibly. Not sure where he's been at, but excited to see him back in action. Young guy, good amount of experience, undefeated, coming out of a good gym, decent size for the division as well, and he's going to be the bigger man in this one. If you look at Lucas Hocha right there, he's got the face of a 4-year-old and the body of a 34-year-old, but he's only 24. Shout out Jack Bauer. But even at 24, he's got a ton of experience. He had to pull out of his debut earlier this year because of injury, although sus, I think he pulled out because of the matchup. Didn't want that Joshua Van smoke, and I can understand. So he's going to be making his debut this week. Debut jitters against a hot prospect coming out of, again, a good gym. Bad biscuits. I think Clayton Carpenter moves to 8-0 this week. I think he just bullies him with his size, with his power, with his presence when it comes to the grappling. I think he grinds out a decision win here with that wrestling. Give me Clayton Carpenter to win on the scorecards. Give me Clayton Carpenter by decision. If you've made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm, and I will see you later in the week for final picks. Let's go.